Hello, everyone. This is Gilgamesh. And today we are going to be talking about Isaiah chapter 7. This is the first of four wonderful children that Isaiah is going to talk about over the next several chapters. And we're going to talk about who they are and what they mean. There's a lot to this chapter, so I'm going to break it into two sections. This first section will cover the first 9 verses, but there's a lot of background information you have to understand to realize what's going on in this chapter, and hopefully you'll come away with a better understanding of what's happening here. Just to summarize where we were at last episode, we talked about Isaiah chapter 6, which was his first vision. He sees God on his throne and a whole bunch of interesting beings there called seraphim that have lots of wings, and he gets his prophetic commission. And this was the start of Isaiah's journey. We're now going to flip forward several years as we look at what's going on with Isaiah's life now in this chapter. To do this, we're going to give you some background history of what's happening in the political landscape so that you can understand some of what's happening here. We're going to talk about some of the archaeological discoveries that have told us a lot about this time. And then we're going to wrap it up with talking about the prophecy involving Isaiah's son, Shear-Yashub. So to start off with, we need to set our timeline here. And last episode, we were at approximately 740 BCE, and that was when Isaiah had his first vision and was called as a prophet. He has a son that we don't know exactly when he was born, but Shear-Yashub was probably born somewhere close to that time frame. I think his name probably reflects the prophetic commission that he had. The name means a remnant will return. It's very likely that this son was named soon after his calling as a prophet, but we really don't have any specific idea of how old this child is or when he was born. Somewhere close to that time, too, King Hezekiah would have been born as well. And again, we don't know an exact time that this happens, but from what we do know of Hezekiah's life, it would have been close to that same time frame. So Isaiah's son, Shear-Yashub, is probably close in age to Hezekiah. As we move forward to 732, well, that's where we're at in this chapter. And there is an invasion that's happening, an attempted coup involving the nations of Syria and Israel here in chapter 7. As we look forward to what's going to happen, because this prophecy is really tied up in that, 722 is when both the nations of Syria and Israel will be destroyed by Assyria. Remember, Assyria and Syria are two different nations. And the nation of Israel is not Isaiah's nation. That is a northern nation to the nation of Judah. They have split. Isaiah is part of Judah. Israel is the northern nation, also called Ephraim, throughout this chapter. Then looking further ahead, 701 will be much later in Isaiah's lifetime. It will be after Hezekiah has grown up and become king. Assyria will invade Judah at that time. After it's already destroyed the northern kingdom, it's going to come in right up to the gates of Zion itself, which will be preserved through a miracle in 701 BCE. So this is what we're talking about here on the timescale of what's happening and what is to come on this. As we look at this, the players are really important. And the first thing we have here is Ahaz, also known as Jehoahaz, and in modern times we call him the second because he was the second person of that name. We only know his more full name because that's how he shows up in the Assyrian Chronicles, which also tell this story from the Assyrian standpoint. So Ahaz was short for this longer Jehoahaz. And this was common practice in them to give a shorter version of the name and a longer version of the name. We see it with several biblical names. He is the king of the southern kingdom of Judah. He is from the royal house of David. That is his lineage. And he is Isaiah's king. His capital is in Jerusalem. We're not sure exactly how big his kingdom was at this point, but it was probably much smaller than most people realize. It seems that his kingdom, Jerusalem, was the most important city in it, and there were a series of other city-states that were allied with Jerusalem that he also ruled over. But it was not a vast kingdom. It was geographically quite small, and Jerusalem was the heart of that kingdom. He is portrayed as a wicked man, He is portrayed as somewhat fearful in this chapter, but we'll see what we think of him based on this chapter. Now, the other person here to talk about is Pekah. Pekah, also known as the son of Remaliah, he is the king of the northern kingdom of Israel, which is also called Ephraim. Its capital is the city of Samaria. And so we're going to see all those terms thrown together to reference this same person. They're going to sometimes call him Pekah. They're sometimes going to call him son of Remaliah. They're sometimes going to refer to his kingdom as Israel, sometimes as Ephraim, and sometimes just by its capital city of Samaria. All of those are the same thing. And you have to know that to make sense out of what's happening here. Ephraim is the largest tribe that is in this kingdom, and that's part of why it gets that name. Samaria is its capital city, and Pekah came to the throne by assassinating his predecessor with the support of 50 men from Gilead, which is possibly where he was from. The northern kingdom is a bit of a mess and has been since about 750 BC. Back then, the dynasty of Jehu was overthrown, and the entire kingdom is going to be destroyed in 722 BC. Of these final chaotic 28 years of the kingdom, so a quarter century, a bit more of the kingdom here, Pekah would reign for 20 of them. So he is by far the king who reigns over Israel during this chaotic period the longest. Although probably for a lot of that time, he was not controlling the entire territory. He was probably only king over all of Israel for about the last 5 years of its existence. He's going to get himself killed as a result of his maneuvering, which we're going to see some of in this chapter. Given that he was some sort of a man of rank before he became king, we're guessing that probably puts him in his 50s, maybe a little older. He's not a young man. Ahaz is a bit of a young man. He takes the throne at 20 and is going to die at about 35. So Ahaz is sort of the young man in this, and Pekah is an older, more seasoned guy. The other person to talk about is Rezin. He is the king of Syria. Syria is also called Aram. In fact, in Hebrew, its name is Aram. Syria is a name that gets put in there in translation, and it's based on some Greek folks that gave it that name. But he's the king of Syria, or the king of Aram, and its capital is Damascus. Damascus is an important city in modern Syria as well. So this helps you position it on the map here. This is something that exists to the north of the modern state of Israel, and also to the north of the ancient kingdom of Israel. He reigned for about 22 years. So he probably isn't young at this point. He's going to also get himself killed by the king of Assyria in his maneuvers here. It's going to end Syria as a nation and will bring an end to a dynasty that goes all the way back to the time of Solomon. So this is also a very, very long-lived dynasty that is going to just come to an end out of the maneuvers we're going to see in this chapter. The other person you need to know about is the king of Assyria. His name, we often get it in English as Tiglath-Pileser III. He is king of Assyria from 747 to 727 BCE. He is also called Pul for short, or Tukulti-Pal-Ashara for long. Tukulti-Pal-Ashara is where we actually get Tiglath-Pileser. It's just anglicized. It seems to be that he is the one who came up with the great idea of deporting people who were rebellious after he had conquered them in order to maintain order in his empire. This is a policy that is going to be followed by all the subsequent empires that are going to take over as well. And it's going to be pretty much Middle Eastern policy until the Persians come to power, who are going to come to a complete reversal of things. It is at the request of Ahaz, who gives the king of Assyria a whole lot of money, that he is going to invade Syria and the northern part of Israel, particularly the part where Pekah is from, his home base in Gilead. That's going to happen in 732 BCE. He's going to have Pekah executed and put in his place a vassal named Hoshea ben Elah. He will be the last king of the northern kingdom of Israel. Tiglath-Pileser's successors, who might be his sons, Shalmaneser V and Sargon II, they are going to finish off the kingdom of Israel in 722 BCE. So his successors are going to be the ones who kind of finish the job. He'll do a certain amount of it 10 years earlier in 732. Another person who's hiding in the background and his sir not appearing in this chapter, is Hiram II. He is over Lebanon, which is also Phoenicia. Lebanon is a name Lebanon was the name of the region, and they actually considered themselves Canaanites, really, but they're the Phoenicians. Particularly, it's more of a city-state structure there. He would probably title himself as King of Tyre, which is the main city. But Hiram II, he's not mentioned in the text, but he's sort of standing in the background here. We know about him from other sources as to what's going on here, particularly the Assyrian sources. He's also going to be convinced, along with Pekah and Rezin, to join this alliance here and stand against Assyria. And he's going to get Tyre and Sidon destroyed in the process. This is subtly referenced in Isaiah, but not called out directly. So we kind of have the three of them here, Pekah, Rezin, and Hiram, that have all decided they're going to stand against Assyria. Assyria is the greatest power in the world right now, and all three of them are going to be destroyed. Only two of them really feature in this chapter, and that's Pekah and Rezin, although Hiram's activity in this will come in and influence a few verses in Isaiah in later chapters. As we look at this here, this is from 2 Kings chapter 16. We have this interesting verse. So Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and rescue me from the hand of the king of Syria and from the hand of the king of Israel, who are attacking me. Ahaz also took the silver and the gold that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house and sent a present to the king of Assyria. That's what the backdrop is here. He has raided the temple. He has raided the royal treasuries. In fairness, all in a bid to keep his nation alive, to stand up again, to survive in the most hostile environment that ever had been, where Assyria is just wiping out entire kingdoms and deporting their peoples. He's trying to become an ally of Assyria, calling himself his son and his servant. And so he sends this handsome present here, asking him to please destroy the northern kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Syria. And that's the backdrop we come into this with. Now, just to refresh your memory a bit here, we mentioned this in a previous episode. Assyria is over in where modern-day Iraq is. It is an area that we also call Mesopotamia because it is the land between the rivers, which is what Mesopotamia means. You can see it is in northern Iraq. That's where its capital is. Its capital is actually a city that is in modern times called Nimrud, but this is where they are stationed out of. They have controlled all the way down through where Jerusalem is, and they're going to go all the way into Egypt. Egypt, of course, is resisting this, and they're pushing back, and that's going to become important in Isaiah as well. But right now, the battleground is right here in the Jerusalem area as to who's going to control this. And as we move forward, this is a zoom in on the Jerusalem area. You can see Jerusalem is here, and this is all the players that are in the area. We've got Judah here, which is where Isaiah is at, and Jerusalem. Northern kingdom of Israel up here. We've got Syria over here around Damascus. And we've got Lebanon here near Tyre. And so these three have kind of formed an alliance here to try and resist the king of Assyria, and they're going to take over the kingdom of Judah. We also have the Philistines living over here in the Gaza Strip, and we have the Edomites that are over here across the Dead Sea area in this southern area. And then, of course, if you go further south, you get the Egyptians. So that's the players that are going on in this. And it's important to understand all this as we talk about this chapter. Now, as we come into the text itself, verse 1, and it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war against it, but could not yet mount an attack against it. I bolded the major names there of the three people involved, Ahaz, Rezin, and Pekah. When the house of David was told, this is the royal house of Ahaz, Syria is in league with Ephraim, meaning that they have an alliance. They're in conference with each other. Syria is in league with Ephraim. The heart of Ahaz and the heart of his people shook as the trees of the forest shake before the wind. Very nice poetic thing there. Everyone is terrified of this possibility. And the Lord said to Isaiah, go out, Meet Ahaz, you and Shear-Yashuv, your son, at the end of the aqueduct of the upper pool on the highway to the washer's field, and say to him," we'll get into what was said, but let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. Isaiah is going to go out to meet him on this road, this highway to the washer's field. Now, this is basically the laundromat. This washer's field is where they washed clothing. So yeah, go out and talk to the king down at the local laundromat is what we're saying here. And that's exactly what we're going to do. There is a pool area where the water gathers here, and it is brought there by an aqueduct. So there is an aqueduct which takes water, the main source of water in Israel is the Gihon spring, and brings it to this pool where they wash clothes. And he is specifically to take his son with him. And this is the first of the four wonderful children. I call them the wonderful children because the name of the fourth one, Wonderful, is actually part of his name. But there's four children that are mentioned here over the next few chapters, and this is the first of them. Shear-Yashuv. His name means a remnant will return. Now, he is only going to be mentioned by name here. That's it. He is one of these four children. It's unclear how old he is, but it would be reasonable to assume that he was born and named after Isaiah's calling, since that calling sort of ends with him saying that some sort of a remnant will return. This whole, there will be a tenth and a stump and something. It didn't make a lot of sense in that last verse. If you look at my last episode, you'll see how that verse reads. It seems clear that there was something in his commission about a remnant returning, and perhaps the son was named shortly after he had that vision. This first part of the prophecy focuses on Shear-Yashuv, and if he was named after Isaiah's vision, that would put him at 8 years old or less. So he is a young child. Now, the actual words, Shear-Yashuv, those two Hebrew words, only appear together once in Isaiah 10:21. And Isaiah 10:21 says, "A remnant will return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty God." Now, the interesting thing about this verse is not only does it contain Shear-Yashuv, and the only time those words are put together like that in the Hebrew, but it also contains the phrase El Gibor, which the only other time in the entire Hebrew Bible where the two words El Gibor go together is in the name of the fourth wonderful child, who would have part of his name be the mighty God. This is not a typical title. It is used only twice in the entire Bible, and it is used when it is naming the fourth child, and it is used here in this 10:21 verse, where it seems to be connecting Shear-Yashuv with that fourth child. So the first child and the fourth child are combined there in that verse. His name is a positive name. The idea that we will survive, a remnant will return. Of the four children, three of them have very positive names. For the most part, all of these children are a very positive prophecy, and Shear-Yashuv particularly is about that they will survive, that a remnant will return. As we're talking about this aqueduct of the upper pool in the highway to the washer's field, I want to be clear that we're not completely sure of the geography of this as to what was considered the upper pool and exactly which aqueduct it is. There is a pretty good guess around an aqueduct that's labeled as Channel 2, very inspiring name, but basically it brought water along the outside of the city wall. And it was more vulnerable. The big thing about it was it could be used as a water supply for invading armies. So if you were invading Jerusalem, you could gather water from this aqueduct that ran outside the city wall to take water down into the southern portion of the city, if that's where it was. There are some people that think that the channel we're talking about actually brought water into the northern part of the city. We're not sure. It is generally understood that the water supply in the time of King Ahaz was inadequate, and his son, Hezekiah, is going to do a major construction project to make the water flow underground to its destination in the south end of the city. The Gihon Spring is far enough down the hill that to build walls around the Gihon Spring, which they did, it left an exposure for archers and other attacking people. And so they had to build other walls higher up the city as well, leaving this somewhat exposed, and also leaving the water supply where it could be used by their enemies. So what Hezekiah does is he shuts up the water supply so it doesn't flow out to where the enemies could be, and he takes it underground to a safer, more secure part in the southern end of the city. And this is what's called Hezekiah's Tunnel, which you see a picture of here. It exists today. If you get the chance to go to Jerusalem, do not miss going through Hezekiah's Tunnel. Walk through it. You can buy fairly inexpensive tickets and walk all the way through it. It's about half a kilometer long. It is loads of fun. And you realize you are walking through a 3,000-year-old tunnel, which is just hard to comprehend. If we look here at this map, it'll give you a little bit better understanding. You can see here a cutaway section of how the tunnel actually runs. And we have here the Gihon Spring, which is down in this area. And this was always a very fortified place. Before the city was under Israelite control, back when the Jebusites had the city, they were Canaanites, they held the city, and they had a very strong defensive tower here. The story is that one of King David's men found his way through something. We're not sure what the Hebrew word means, but most people believe that it means some type of a water tunnel, that they used the tunnels that the Canaanites had to access this water supply in order to infiltrate the city. After that, there was more defensive measures, and then here in Hezekiah's time is where they got very serious about it. And yes, he dug all the way through here underground to take water all the way down here to the Siloam pool. Before that, water would flow in this outer area to come down here to the southern pool. And also from here would divert down into the Kidron Valley. So this provided a much more secure way to transport the water. So in the event of a siege, they had a lot of recourse to things that they could do. To give you some bearings here on what we're talking about here, you can see the temple complex here at the north of the city at the time of Hezekiah. This is very different from how Jerusalem is situated today. And it's very different from how it was in the late Second Temple period. This is where the temple complex is here, and then we have the royal complex over here. And some people think that the Fuller's Pool might have been over here in the northern part of the city in a fairly exposed area. Others think that it was down here in the south. We're really not sure. But looking at this here, this temple complex here is roughly right here on a picture of modern Jerusalem. This is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is the Dome of the Rock. And we think that the temple complex was somewhere in here. Some people would put the temple itself all the way back over here. We're not really sure, but it's somewhere in this area. But this wall you see here is roughly the same place as the wall up here. And then all this here would be down in this area. And this area that's circled here is an area of major archaeological finds around the royal complex in Jerusalem. Now, I lived in Israel back in '98, and in that time, this area was largely open with no real controls of any kind, and people that were interested in such things, like myself, just wandered in whenever we wanted to at any time of day or night and wandered around looking at things. It's crazy, actually, looking back on it, how accessible it was, and that I was walking over so many important archaeological finds, but that's the way it was back in '98. Now, if you visit, this whole area here is a large archaeological park with all sorts of active digs going on. Things have been excavated, and there's just a tremendous amount to see. Again, if you go to Jerusalem, don't miss it. This is the real old part. And we have stuff there from the Second Temple period. We have stuff all the way back to the First Temple period. And down this hill here further is what you see in this section right here, which is where the old city of David was. A lot of great archaeological finds there, but this area here particularly is where the complex was, that was the royal complex. Now, the other thing to note is this bit of wall right here is known as the Siloam inscription. It has been taken off the inside of the tunnel. Actually, if we go back here, you can see here, it was at the end of the tunnel. This is where the Siloam inscription was, is right here on the tunnel. This one was taken off the wall, and you can't see it as well on the photograph. If you look closely, you can see it, but there is writing all over it, and it is Paleo-Hebrew writing. And what it says is, the tunneling was finished, and this was the matter of the tunneling. when the hewers yielded the axe, each man toward his fellow, and while there were still 3 cubits to be hewn, there was heard a man's voice calling to his fellow, for there was a crack in the rock on the right and on the left. And at the end of the tunneling, the hewers hacked each man towards his fellow, axe upon axe, and there flowed the waters from the spring towards the reservoir for 200 and 1,000 cubits, and 100 cubits was the height of the rock above the heads of the hewers. So they were 100 cubits deep in the earth, and they had this tunnel that was 200 and 1,000 cubits long, which is roughly half a kilometer. It is a marvelous thing. And as you get towards the center of the tunnel, you can see where this story happened, because the tunnels start weaving back and forth as they try to find each other. They were hearing each other, and they were trying to find the 2 tunnels that had them meet in the middle, which is engineering wise a crazy thing to do, but exactly how they did it. They dug at both ends until they met in the middle, and somehow they managed to make that work. All sorts of fascinating. This inscription is actually one of the very important inscriptions we have as an example of biblical Hebrew that is outside the Bible, that is lengthy and gives us a lot of information as to what Hebrew looked like, how it worked in the actual time. Our biblical manuscripts are 1,000 years younger than these, but this dates back to the time of Hezekiah. It was carved by men of his time. Now, you will note it never mentions the name of the king. Hezekiah's name doesn't show up in the inscription, and there are people who doubt that he was the actual king that made this tunnel. He probably was. There's pretty good agreement on that at this point. We've done a lot of different kinds of dating techniques on the tunnel. If it wasn't him, it was pretty close to him. And if anything, I've heard arguments it might have been slightly before his time. It was a major achievement, and the Bible credits him with having done it. And it's something that you can see today. It's well worth seeing. This is important as we're talking about the idea of an army is coming to besiege them. It's going to surround Jerusalem. All of this comes into this. And here, She'er Yashuv is going to meet the king at the place of the water supply, which is so important in times of war. And he's doing this while these armies are threatening the kingdom of Judah, and they are terrified at the prospect of it. Now, just a little bit more. In that area, which was the royal complex, we found a seal of King Ahaz. Yeah, so this is the seal of King Ahaz. Now, there's a couple of fun things about it. There's dots between the words. If you look right here, there's a dot. And then if you look right here, there's a dot. And even here at the end, even though we're dropping down to the next line, there's still a dot here to say that another word is coming up. And so it says here, Ahaz, and then this is the fun here. This is his father's name. There's no word for son here, which was typical on royal seals. They were trying to save space, so they didn't use the word son. They just put his name and then his father's name right after it. This is the first letter of his father's name, and then this is the next 4 letters of his father's name here. So they had no problem with words just dropping down to the next line like this. They didn't feel like a word needed to stay on the same line. So this is Yehotam, and then we have here the word Melech, which is king, and then we have here Yehuda, Judah. So we have here Ahaz, son of Yehotham, king of Judah. This is his royal seal. And you can see it's rather plain. Now, here's the cool part. Look at these ridges over here. That's a fingerprint. That might be Ahaz's fingerprint. It's quite possible that he left his fingerprint here as he was making this seal. Because this, again, is the clay. This isn't the thing that makes the seal. This is the result. And there's going to be a lot more of these than there are of the original item that you press into the clay. But as he's pressing into the clay here, he left a fingerprint. This is the back of that seal. And this is interesting because you can see here, this is where the strings went through. And so what they did is they wrote on papyrus, folded it up, and tied a string around it, and then pressed the clay onto the string so that you could see that the string was still tied and that the clay enveloped it here. And that's the way the seal worked. And so we still have the string, and we even have some texture from the papyrus on the backside of the seal. That's the way it was done. Now, this is another one of these items. This is what makes the seal. This is an orange carnelian seal that has a sun disk with ram's horns flanked by asps and topped with the 3 crowns of the type worn by the Egyptian god Osiris. Very elaborate artwork, and it's very much in Egyptian style, but what's down here is Hebrew, not Egyptian. And it says, I can't read it because it's really faint here, but it says belonging to Ashana, servant of Ahaz. So this is the king's servant, and he gets a fancy seal, which is a bit of a puzzler with the king's seal being so plain. Why does the servant get the cool seal? But this is an actual seal that you would press into the clay, and there you go. That's how it's made. And this one is quite fancy, where the king's is quite plain. Servant was a title that was given to people that were high ranking. So don't think this is a slave or anything like that. This is probably an important official, but servant was an honorable title, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. That is some of the finds that we found here at the south end of the Temple Mount in that area that was marked. Great stuff. This is the message that Isaiah delivers to King Ahaz with his son there. Be careful, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart be faint. It's very straightforward. Buck up, man. You've got this. This is going to be okay. The house of David is not going to fall because of these two smoldering sticks of firewood and the burning anger of Rezin and Syria and the son of Remaliah. So remember, Rezin and Syria, same thing. Rezin is the king of Syria. And the son of Remaliah, that's the king of Israel. Pekah. They're just referring to him by his surname, son of Remaliah. Notice that we have the idea here of burning anger. Burning anger is being played against the idea that these are smoking sticks of firewood. The idea is that there's a lot of smoke, but they're just not that potent. This isn't like that they are a raging fire or anything like that. They're smoldering or smoking sticks of firewood here. And they have this burning anger, but Ahaz does not need to fear them, because Syria, with Ephraim and the son of Remaliah, has devised evil against you, saying, let us go up against Judah and terrify it, and let us conquer it for ourselves and set up the son of Tabiel as king in the midst of it. Okay, we've got an attempted coup going on. This son of Tabiel, nothing is known about this person outside this verse. It appears there was a planned coup. They would have removed the house of David and installed this person as king. The meaning of even the name Tabiel has had a lot of creative interpretations to it, including good for nothing and the one who is good for us. Those are very fanciful interpretations, and they're not right. That's based on trying to find the closest connection in the Hebrew language, which would be the Hebrew word tov, trying to attach it to this name, but it's almost certainly not correct. Most scholars believe that it means something like God is good, and they connect it with similar names that you will find in Syria. So this is probably a Syrian puppet that can be placed over Judah and controlled by Israel and Syria. Because remember, their goal is to survive Assyria, who is coming down to destroy them, and Ahaz isn't playing ball with their alliance. So if you can kill Ahaz and put in a puppet instead, you could muster the armies of Judah to join you in your cause to stand against Assyria. And that seems to be their plan. They are in a fight for their existence. They are hoping that if they could get all three of those kingdoms, as well as Hiram of Tyre, to get into alliance, they might stand a chance. And that's kind of where they're thinking on this. Isaiah then gives his prophecy here. Thus saith the Master Lord, it shall not stand, and it shall not come to pass, for the head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years, Ephraim will be shattered from being a people. And the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is the son of Remaliah. If you do not build faith, you will not receive faith. This is Isaiah's message, and this is the prophecy of She'er Yeshuv, a remnant will return. He's saying it's not going to work, and you'll notice that it's put together here as a bit of a chiasm. He starts with the idea of it's not going to stand, it's not going to be established. And he ends it with that if you don't have faith, you won't receive faith. So the idea of being established, standing. And then we have the most obvious part of the chiasm here, the parallel between Syria and Ephraim. Now remember, Syria is Rezin, and it's saying the head of Syria is Damascus, that's its capital city, and the head of Damascus is Rezin, that's the king. And he does the same thing on the other side. Ephraim, which is also Israel, its head is Samaria, which is its capital city, and the head of its capital city is the son of Remaliah, who is Pekah. Those are nice parallels there. And in the center of the chiasm, it has here 65 years. 65 years, and Ephraim is going to be destroyed. There's a slight problem. What's going to happen in 65 years? If She'er Yashuv is maybe about 10, it's actually probably a couple years younger than that, but that would be about a normal lifespan, about 75 years. So are they saying that sometime in She'er Yashuv's life, this is going to happen, that Ephraim's going to be destroyed? Maybe. As we give a lot of the wonderful children here, there is often time frames given centered around their development as to when things are going to happen. And this one we're dealing with is 65 years. The problem is that Ephraim is not going to be shattered in 65 years. It's going to be shattered in 722. That's only 8 to 10 years away at this point. So this is not something that's going to happen 65 years in the future. It's going to happen in less than a decade. So what's happening in 65 years? Well, Robert Alter, one of the translators I really like, he thinks that this is a later interpolation, that it was invited by the momentum of the prophecy and the interruption of the reign of Rezin and of Pekah. This 65-year span is nonetheless puzzling because this prophecy would have been enunciated perhaps a dozen years before Assyria overwhelmed the northern kingdom, probably even less than that. It doesn't work for Ephraim losing its sovereignty. It's going to lose it much sooner than 65 years. Now, does being smashed as a people mean something else? Even if you accept Robert Alter's idea that it's a later interpolation, it had to be based on something happening 65 years later. The best guess that scholars have come up with is that this is a reference to Ashur-hadon, the later king of Assyria, who further deported people from that former kingdom of Israel and imported people from other lands into it around that time, around 65 years after this time. That kind of fits. Maybe that's what a reference is to here. Maybe 65 years, maybe the text's wrong. Hard to say. But why 65 years is a bit of a mystery. We don't really know why that happens or what it clearly is referencing. It's going to take much less than 65 years. So this last couplet here, I translated it as, if you do not build faith, you shall not receive faith. If you look at translations, you'll see they're all over the place. It's really tough to translate this because it's not terribly clear what it's saying. Robert Alter calls it a cryptic declaration, but it is a wordplay. The same verb is used in both lines of the couplet, and the verb is aman, which is where we get our word amen. The first time it's used in a causative form. Now, the word itself means to have faith or trust in something. It can also mean to be secure or established, which seems to be going with the idea of faith. But the first time it appears, it's sort of a causative, which is to cause someone to have faith. They're both in the second person. The second time it appears, in the last bit here, it's in the passive, which is more of to receive faith, to receive trust, to have people trust in you. That's where I came to it with my translation. If you do not build faith, you will not receive faith. I think that's the sense of what it is here. It's definitely saying that if you don't follow through on what the Lord wants you to do, it's not going to end well. That part of it is clear, but the exact way to word it is a little unclear here. But yes, it seems to be saying to Ahaz, who is maybe not the most faithful guy on earth, that you're going to have to lead this people. You're going to have to be the one who builds their faith, because the very existence of Judah is threatened at this point. You're going to survive. And that's part of where She'er Yashuv comes in. A remnant will return. He's trying to give the message here to Ahaz that you will survive this. And that's where we're going to leave it today for our first half of this chapter. The next half of this chapter, we will pick up the second of the wonderful children, who is named Emmanuel. I hope to see you in that one. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Leave us a comment in the comment section. It helps the algorithm. And I'll see you then.